good evening. TikTok, time to rock. It is the Electric Sunday 5150 show. Something like that.
One of those terrible speaking bot things. Weird.
It's those guys again. It's these guys again.
It's them. It's them again.
It's them.
Thank you. Yes. Andrew Walton, all over the internet. He's been on more times today, the last 24 hours, haven't you? Fourth show?
Jeez, mate. I'm going to give it to you.
Yeah.
If people don't understand, people don't understand when you do these shows, they're quite, like, you do get a little bit tired, you know, they tax you a little bit because you've got to be on the money. You've got to try and think about what you're going to say all the time. But I guess for you, Andrew, it just comes naturally. It flows out of your mouth, just no thought. It just comes out.
It's called bullshit. It's called bullshit, bro. It just flows. Thank you. You busted me live. Good to see you guys. Good to see the Rock Professor. If you guys are watching a replay and you don't know who the Rock Professor is, he's up there. He's up there. He's the grey dude next to the guy with the grey beard.
Yes.
Yeah. And down below we've got the handsome fella, the young boy, the new fella on the block.
the Ronnie Wood of the group.
Ronnie of the group, Simon.
Brad, the guns cook.
Actually, he was cracking the whip, ladies and gentlemen. Before we were goofing around in the green room, and he said, "Come on, guys, I'm a gigging musician, man. I'm disciplined here. I'm used to starting gigs on time. Come on, let's go."
Come on, guys. It was my fault we're late. Let's just...
You're just pretending, aren't you, Brad? I'm a disciplined musician. It's like, yeah.
Discipline.
Mate, I try to bluff everyone, but you guys have got me, so I can't hide myself.
Yes.
Yeah, it's good to see you guys. Good to see you guys. And we've got holy cow, we've got 8 people in the chat, Simon, so we will do a shout out to them soon. But we've got some news, ladies and gentlemen. Like Brad said, we've been a little bit busy on the channel. I hung out with Quentin James on a stream with Ben Coombs. We started the same time, our YouTube channels, back in 2018, so we have that connection. And the Rock Professor and I, gosh, weren't we... Brad, you got to go and watch that show with John. We were just... bro, I have to tell you, I'm in awe. I've been... When I went back and listened to the album that we're ranking today, it's true. It's true. I was listening to, some songs. I changed my scores.
Yeah. Wow.
Because of it. Oh, well, see, change your scores.
On 3 songs. On 3 songs anyway.
Up or down.
But it was absolutely nice. It was a pleasure to have John from the Red Special podcast, and there are a few people here in the chat that were on that stream. So we've got some good news, ladies and gentlemen. Our channel helped get John and his channel over the 1K mark. So congratulations, everybody. That's what we do. And Brad, Simon, we were part of that. So actually, I don't have to do. Hey, hold on.
Where are they? Ears cupped.
That's for everybody.
Dear.
And I think that's all I've got to say. Now it's up to Brad and the Rock Professor. I think Brad and Simon, I think you guys have got something to say, haven't you, in the intro?
Well, you know, I got to say, I saw some clickbait through the week, and you posted it, Andrew. So, you know, I think that was some clickbait this week. You beat me to it. I was actually going to have it ready, but here we go. 2 seconds, everyone. I'm going to show some clickbait here. Where are we?
Yes.
Yes, this is one of the new clickbaits we've got, and
Yeah, who's that handsome dude, man? I don't know who that
Somebody
dude
said
is.
Indiana Walton.
that's a badass hat.
It's
Yes,
mate.
and
Look at that.
It's one of your hats, bro. It's an Akruba.
No, that's mate. You wear it well. You look
Thank you,
handsome.
brother.
Mate. Well done.
Thank you, bro. Nice hat. I always wanted an Akruba. Over the years, I've had friends that have had them, and one of the great things about Akrubas is that you can get different styles. You know, they're not cheap, but they're good.
Yes, but you get what you pay for, mate. So that's what I always say.
Oh,
Yeah. And we have vicious, mean summers here in New Zealand, like you guys. Not to the extent that you guys have in the outback, but yeah, keep the sun off the face. You know, keep the skin looking good. You know what I mean, man? Fight back those years.
Mate, just before I came on here, and one of the reasons I'm running late today is because as I'm pulling my car up, parked my car, came inside it started belting down hail. I was like,
Yep.
ran out to the car, garage, parked the car. So yeah, it's like 4 seasons in a day here at the moment in Melbourne. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's got
Professor,
cold
you got
here.
some news.
I got some news. My first bit of news is, yes, it's back from the menders, back from the refretters.
All right,
back from the refretters, from Hugh
Blackie
Price.
is back.
Yeah, beautiful, fantastic job, really nice, really plays beautifully, and he's done a fantastic job.
They look like big frets, Simon. What are they, Jumbo?
No, they're not. No. They're just ordinary, normal, the same frets as it has on it normally. Fender's just saying normal kind of vintage frets. They're not very big, not very high, but they're fine. You know, I went for the same thing again.
Yep.
Good.
Which is beautiful. Roll edges, it's lovely. It's fantastic. Plays better than it has done in the past, and it's I'm really pleased with it because it's fantastic. I got both my strats back. I'm gradually going through my guitars and getting Hugh to kind of just fettle them into shape, just so that they're all perfect. It's lovely, ridiculous, and yeah, fantastic. So anybody in the UK who wants a fret job done, he's a very good guy for doing it. Hugh Price, fantastic. So thank you, Hugh. And, yes, fantastic stuff. So yes, very pleased about that. I had a chaotic day getting it, but with cars breaking down and stuff and all sorts of stuff. But I got there and got it. Which is great.
Got there in the end.
Got there in the end. And a couple of shout outs. We've got a shout out to John Conklin as well. Last night, I know he wasn't on the show last night. He's still recovering from his heart surgery, I think, which is and I think it's proving to be something of a tough ride for him. So thoughts to John, please. Messages and thoughts,
All the best, Con. Yeah, all the best.
Yeah. See you back on soon. Yeah. But so we hope that that's going all right, John, and your recovery is going well. I know Jim was talking a bit about it yesterday. So thoughts to you, John. Also thoughts to Jay Hannon and his family for his daughter Ellie as well, who's still in hospital. So thoughts out to them. And happy birthday to Mike Vernon, legendary producer of the Blues Breaker album, the Beano album, with Eric. Is Derek? Yeah, and one of the pillars of our channel. That album is that sound, everything else, and such a great part of that, Mike Vernon. So happy birthday, Mike! If you get to see this,
yeah, happy birthday.
But yesterday, I think.
Yeah.
So good, yes. So that's all my shout outs.
Yeah, all the best.
Yeah,
awesome.
Yeah, cool.
you want to kick the show off then? Shall we? Shall we, ladies and gentlemen?
Shall we? Shall we?
I think we should. Definitely should.
I think we should. Yes. So, Night at the Opera. This is our Queen weekend. We had John from the Red Guitar podcast on. This is all about Brian May's guitar. The misnomered Red Guitar podcast, because the guitar's actually brown. But let's not talk about that. It's actually brown, not red. So that's fun. So yeah, congratulations, John, for getting over 1,000 subscribers. Yeah, that's brilliant. And we decided that we'd do a kind of, Andrew was getting him on to come and talk about his podcast. We'd have a Queen weekend and line it up and do things. So we're talking about Queen and Night at the Opera this week. I don't know when you guys first heard it. I first heard it when it came out, because that's me. It's one of those albums that we all had, back in '75. I mean, clearly, we'll talk about the tracks, but it has one of the greatest tracks of all time on it, and you couldn't escape from it then. Can't escape from it now, I don't think. And so I mean, I had it when it came out, and as an album, so it's been part of my rock life forever, really. Brad, what about you? When did you come across it?
Oh,
clearly not when it came out.
No, I was doing my apprenticeship as in the very early days. I was getting into playing guitar. I was frequently buying guitar magazines. There was an article on Brian May in it, and on Queen, and just coincidentally, one of the workshop manager put on Bohemian Rhapsody, the song, and I'd heard it many times before, but really focused in on the guitar playing. So I was like, yeah, Brian May, I'm digging this. This is cool. So I went out and bought like a greatest hits of Queen on CD. And from there, I obviously went to the greatest hits 2 of Queen. So all the second album of that. And then I started, each album individually to see, investigating what else there was of Queen. And look, Queen is not like Led Zeppelin to me, but they're amazing, and you've got to give credit where credit's due. There's a lot of magical moments on this album in particular that we're doing today. Like you said too, Simon, it's got one of the greatest songs of all time. So that pretty much for me, that's my background into this album in particular. How about you, Andrew?
Cool. I just want to do a special shout out to Charmaine Taylor is in the chat. Nice to see you, Charmaine. Finally in Melbourne. Thank you for hanging out with us. Good to see you. Guys, I'm pretty lucky. One of the interesting things about music, and we keep saying it, is that other people draw you in. They expose you to all these things. And a very good friend of mine in high school, his name at the time, his name was Elliot Strange, and
great name.
Honestly, that was his name, and he was literally a funny guy because he liked hockey and he liked cricket and he was really, really good at that. And I never played hockey and none of my friends did, but we played a little bit of social cricket, but he was good at it. But he used to walk around with records, Brad. He used to walk around with records, and anyway, he had that Volume 1 album that you're talking about, Queen's Greatest Hits. Yeah. Anyway, he was a cool dude because his parents didn't like him. So they got a caravan for him and they chucked him out into this caravan. So it was good because it meant that we could go over to his place and we could smoke ciggies in his caravan and listen to music. Yeah. It's always good to have
Youth
a band
club
friend.
Yes.
Yeah. So and we used to give him shit about that too. We used to say even back then, well, at least our parents love us. Stuff like that. Yeah. He didn't cry.
None so harsh, is there? None so harsh, is there?
Yeah, he didn't cry. But anyway, he was the Queen nut. And I haven't changed because when I would see back then, Brad, when I would see the love that someone would have and their face would light up when they were talking about a band, and he would sing the whole song and we would sit there and go, oh, wow. So it wasn't just the music that would impress us. It was the fact that it had an effect on somebody that was close to us. So it must have been pretty good. So I checked out Queen too. Back then, you didn't have classic radio, so Bohemian Rhapsody wasn't played on the radio, so you're listening to it for the first time, and it's like captivating, absolutely captivating. I'm gonna make this the short version, Brad and Simon, and then I think it was about a year later, or maybe 2 years, and then all of a sudden, Brian May's being used in the same conversation with Eddie Van Halen, the Starfleet project. And so we're going, okay, this guy, Brian May, must be super cool because he's hanging out with Eddie Van Halen. So that was the connection. And then, obviously, I started finding out a little bit more about the albums. Simon, I reckon I would have been about 20, 21, 22 when I heard this album in its entirety. I heard half the songs. Half the songs, you knew the songs. But the whole album in its entirety, I would have been, in my 20s. And, it was an unusual album, but I knew, though, Simon, that the people that were listening to it, that were talking about it, said that there were treasures there. And it took a bit of time, Brad, for me to pull the treasures out. So I'm looking forward to spending some time with you guys to talk about some of the treasures in these songs. Yeah. And one more thing, just listening to it a couple of times since we did the podcast, enthralled me. So I look forward to sharing those observations with you guys.
Yeah, fantastic. I'll just go do a quick shout out to everyone in the chat. John ZD351, morning, John. He thought we would talk about the Marx Brothers film. We can, but not now, John. Greg Roberts Tune, morning, Greg. Gretch Zeppelin, morning, Gretch. Good to see you. And we had what else we got in here? Tim Thomas, morning, Tim. Nelson Rodriguez and Thomas Santiago, morning, guys. Hope we're good. Quentin, of course, Quentin. Ellen, morning, Ellen. Hope you're good. And Charmaine Taylor as well. Johnny Heartbreaker, morning, Johnny. Thanks for joining, man. Good to see you. Keith Campbell, Tim Thomas, John. I think that's probably everybody. Hopefully I got everybody. So good morning to you all. Thanks for joining. Good to see everyone. And yes, sadly we're doing the newer version of A Night at the Opera for John. So yes, I mean I first kept Queen were clearly in the before that, because they had hits in the UK. They'd had Seven Seas Arrive from Queen 2. So that's my first memory of Queen, is being on Top of the Pops and playing Seven Seas Arrive, which is a pretty it's got that kind of Queen bit, but it's got it's got a rock song, proper rock song. And we used to love anything rock on Top of the Pops, anything, desperate for see anything rock on Top of the Pops, because it had such an eclectic mix of things. That,
were Bay City Rollers rock back then, Simon?
No, they were never
good.
Rock, Andrew,
Thank you.
They continue not to be rock ever.
Okay, good.
Don't mention. Can we not mention them again?
Okay. I'm sorry.
It gives me a cold sweat. the tartan trouser. Anyway, stop that. So they were around. They're a big band. I went to see them in '75 at the Colston Hall in Bristol. So I've seen them live, and I mean, I think clearly you don't get the sort of the trials and tribulations of behind the scenes. We go into that a bit on this, but just thought they were just getting to be a big rock band and cracking it. Always, they're amazing live, of course. With Freddie Mercury, he's a fantastic frontman, operatic, theatrical frontman, and stuff. So it's fantastic. So they've been a part of that since the early '70s for me. So anyway, Night at Opera is their fourth album, and released on the 21st of November 1975. Produced by Roy Thomas Baker, who'd worked with them previously. and with whom they started to produce that sound, that multi-layered sound that is Queen. They're named, as John has alluded to, named after the Marx Brothers film of the same name. Clearly, they did The Day at the Races later, so following that as a theme all the way through. I'd sort of quote. I think that somebody said that the Queen Night of the Opera is Queen's crowning moment, their masterpiece, their Sergeant Pepper. All that Queen had learned from their first 3 albums, all their musical ambition and artistic vision would all come to fruition on this excellent LP. Apparently the most expensive album made to this point. It's an album where, like the Beatles' Revolver, when all 4 members, different personalities and musical influences came to the fore properly. I think that's true. It was a big hit in the UK, and clearly had one of the biggest singles of all time on it. But we'll get to that. We'll get to that. It's interesting. Debunks my theory. Not quite. About the second last thing. So the background to it is that they clearly they'd had some trouble with. They'd signed to Trident Studios as a management deal, and had a lot of trouble with that because I don't think it was going very well. I don't think they were getting paid very much money. Apparently, they put them on £60 a week. All right, even though they'd had hit records, Sheer Heart Attack was a big hit, and clearly Seven Seas Arrive was a big hit before that, and and matters came to a head apparently when John Deacon wanted £4,000 to put a deposit down on a house. Let me tell you, team, £4,000 to buy a house then that's quite a lot of money. Must have bought quite a lot of house. Was a thing. So they eventually hired some lawyers, and in December '74 to negotiate their way out of the Trident deal. Clearly not doing anything for them, and regained control of their back catalogue. And but they had to pay half. They had to pay half of the £200,000 to buy out their contracts, and they had to give Trident 1% royalties from their next 6 albums. I think Trident Studios probably did quite well out of that. Additionally, a tour of America scheduled for '75 had to be cancelled, as it had been organised by Jack Nelson, who was associated with Trident. So with funds running low, Queen immediately began searching for new management. Can you imagine this? Shortlist names: Peter Rudge, Peter Grant, and John Reed, who was Elton John's manager. I can't imagine what Peter Grant would have done well, he would have signed them to Swan Song, and the rest would have been history, probably. Possibly not, but clearly it became John Reed, who was already Elton John's manager, so he became their manager, and they went into the studio and started to record A Night at the Opera, working with Roy Thomas Baker and engineer Mike Stone, and they spent 7 studios over a period of months recording the album, including Rockfield Studios in Monmouthshire, up the road from me, not very far away from me. Rockfield Studios, quite a famous studio. It's a residential studio. Nice to go and record there. I've been there a couple of times for various reasons, but and this is where they started really, honing their multi-tracking for their complex vocal harmonies, which consists of Brian May singing the low registers, Mercury singing the middle registers, and Roger Taylor singing the high parts. I didn't realise this. John Deacon doesn't sing, so he's the one who doesn't. But the other 3 more than made up for it. So they recorded using 24-track on The Night of the Opera, and clearly many overdubs, as you can tell from listening to it. Many overdubs, and that layering effect of of Brian May's guitar, using the DK amp, which we talked about yesterday on our conversation with John. This tiny little amp, it's not very big. I think it's got 2 speakers in it, but it makes that kind of guitar orchestra sound. That is a trademark Brian May sound. So we can, which appears a lot on this. So So lots of things to get into, but I think that's my my background and an intro to it. And anybody want to add anything else before we get into the tracks?
No.
No.
Well done.
Hopefully that covered it without going too much, going on and on forever. Okay, so the first track is "Death on Two Legs," which is considered to be Freddie's hate letter to Queen's first manager, Norman Sheffield, who for some years were reputed to have mistreated the band and abused his role as their manager. The lyrics refer to blood-sucking leeches and decaying sewer rats, although the song never made direct reference to him. After listening to it, the playback at Strident Studios around the time of release, Sheffield sued the band and the record company for defamation, which resulted in an out-of-court settlement, but also confirmed his connection to the song. So, slightly hoisted by your own petard there. So, Brian May was unsure about the lyrics and felt bad, which is kind of typical Brian, actually, given that interview that he did with John. You can tell he's a sensitive guy, isn't he? It's kind of, I can see him being uncomfortable with something as pointed as this in a slightly different way to Fred. But it's decided that the songwriter's final choice would be that it should be sung. So apparently most of the guitar parts on this song were initially played on the piano by Mercury and then demonstrated to Brian May, and how they need to be played. I don't know whether that's so. During live performances, Freddie would usually rededicate the song to a real beep of a gentleman. So what? Yeah. So it starts off, and I think we talk a lot on here about setting the tone of an album, and that faraway classical kind of piano that Freddie plays now, it comes kind of close up, and then you've got that kind of dramatic. I don't know if it's Brian May with the guitar thing doing that kind of cello-y type noise. Apparently, that's one of the things that little will do, and then it just cuts into the piano, but it's that very dramatic feel, isn't it? I mean, the one thing that struck me about listening to this album was that that it almost struck me as it almost could have been a piece of musical theatre. Could almost, you might have, it's like Les Mis or something, or you might have gone to the theatre to see this kind of show. But clearly, why the Queen show that they do now, was it We Will Rock You, is such a success because it has that theatrical quality to it. It inhabits that as much as it does the rock world, I think, is anything else. I mean, it's they've got all the stuff is on here. Classic Brian May solo with that sound on it. He's got the vocal harmonies that they've the overdub vocal harmonies, which I don't know if anyone's. I go on about this a bit, but I'll say it again. That that the way that they built those harmonies up, you can go and listen to them in isolation. There's YouTube tracks of them in isolation, and I'll say it again. They did them all live. Went in, sang one, sang another part. I mean, none of your auto tune, none of your Melodyne stuff. This is real life. Going in and singing it again, and I think you've got to have a massive amount of talent to do it, and B, you've got to have you've got to have vision and drive and the ability, all of those things to be able to do it. And it's amazing. I mean, even if we've got some whammy bar swoops on the guitar solo later on in the thing, very dramatic feel. And it, interestingly, and they've done this a bit, is that it goes straight into the next track, doesn't it? There's just a breathe in before it goes into the next track. Yeah, so I think this is a classic opening. It says what this album is going to be, and it's a 9 out of 10 for me, and never a skip. Brad,
Andrew.
Yeah.
Sorry, Andrew. Pass.
9 out of 10 for Alan as well. Hey, Robert, nice to see you. And Teresa's in the chat. You guys are awesome. Yeah. Thanks for hanging out with us. Yeah. Let us know also, guys, what you think your scores might be on this album. I read somewhere that Brian called this song, or Roger called the song, heavy metal tango, and it was also known as Psycho Legs. Brad, I can't help but thinking when I hear the start of this, Iron Man, I am Iron Man, going on the start of this. I love it. It's delicate. We've got that sixpence intro solo by Brian May, and it's one of my favourite solos. It's just a nice little piece of Brian May right at the start. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. We've got some photos to show, ladies and gentlemen. Simon, Freddie's strident with his vocals, and you've already told us the reason why. He's muscular and he's making a barging statement. And, musicians, when they want to make statements about being ripped off by management, they're going to do it, and they've done it, and they're going to continue to do it. And why not? Because these guys that were ripping them off were paying them £20 a week. And in fact, they cried about that because originally they wanted to pay them £15 a week, when, Queen 2 was making making a lot of money. So as you said, Simon, in your intro, they had to get out, and they got out, and they got good management to do that. So good on them for doing that. Look, you got the tom-tom patterns there happening, Brad, by Roger Taylor. There's, it's just, as the rock professor said, there's a glimpse of what's going on in this intro song. I love the song. I originally gave this song 8 out of 10. I'm sorry I'm going to bore you with some of the scores that I've changed. but after listening to it again, I have to give it a 9 out of 10 too. It's it's a great song. Brad.
Wow, that was great, Andrew. Thank you,
brother.
Look, for me, Death on Two Legs is that haunting intro. I agree with you, Andrew, on that one. I'm going to try not to repeat what everyone's saying here. It's always that third person curse. You've got a lot of stuff that's in what we're talking about.
I promise I'll leave you a couple of crumbs.
No, it's all right. I'm fine. That 40-second mark into the song, it's like it takes a new turn. The song takes a new turn. There's some great guitar playing from Brian May, like at the start there. You guys mentioned about the whammy bar thing and everything. That's really cool. He's a fantastic guitarist. The piano by Freddie is fantastic, and equally Freddie's voice sounds amazing. Lyrically, obviously, very clever about their previous management, and obviously that lyric "Kiss My Ass Goodbye." That's a great lyric, and you couldn't say anything better. So, very, very cool orchestrated guitar section from Brian May. Roger Taylor's drumming. I'll elaborate a little bit more about it. It's like he's actually playing part of the song, not actually keeping drum beats. So he is keeping it together and keeping it tight, but he's orchestrated as well on the drums, and that's a very creative mind for a drummer. Most drummers will think one way or the other, and he's a creative-minded drummer. And he comes up. It's like Ringo's style. Ringo would play as part of the song, not just a backbeat for the majority of the song. So well done to Roger Taylor. John Deacon's bass playing is always fantastic. He's one of my favorite bass players. He's a fantastic bass player. Overall, it's a great opening track. Putting it against rating some of the other songs on the album, I've rated it 8 out of 10, and never a skip for me.
Yep.
Yeah, cool. So it goes straight into without, as I say, just that kind of just a breath between to lazing on a Sunday afternoon, which is another kind of a Mercury thing. He played piano, performed all the vocals. The lead vocal was sung in the studio and reproduced through headphones in a tin bucket. Nice. The microphone picked up the sound from the bucket, which gives it its hollow megaphone sound. Guitar solo is also reported to have been recorded on the vocal track, as there were no more tracks to record on. That's what I'm talking about fusing up the tracks. So it has very kind of musical vaudeville vibe. This is a funny thing about, I know Freddie Mercury wasn't clearly not born in this country, but it absorbed this kind of musical vaudeville vibe, and comes out quite a lot in these in some of these songs. Piano led with that amazing kind of expressive percussion with bells and whistles and banging and clanging stuff, as used for dramatic effect. Multi-layered harmonies, nice melodic solo from Brian May. It's a 1 minute song, so I've given it 7.5 out of 10, but I'd never skip it. It's fun. It's jolly good fun, and again showcases their talents. But I would say it's a minor song on here, but lots of fun, and I'd never skip it. So yeah, 7.5 out of 10 from me.
Awesome. Yeah. So what's interesting, guys, about this album is we'll mention probably who wrote the songs, because that's probably going to be a key about maybe the song for some people. Certainly it was for me when I became aware of some of the songs that I thought Freddie wrote, but then found out actually other people wrote them. So this is, as Simon said, it's a Freddie Mercury song. After the barbed wire opening, Simon and Brad, we get this, don't we? And as Brian said, apparently it's a perfect example of them not wanting to be a traditional rock band. They knew exactly, apparently, what they wanted to do. And this is a conscious effort. This is not a mistake, ladies and gentlemen. This is a determined band doing this on purpose for a reason. And hopefully later on, as we go through the program, maybe we can all see what that reason is. The first key, clearly, from the research I've done, and I've been a closet Queen fan for a little while, not an expert though, but the jazz influence on Freddie has always been a big thing, and he speaks about it a lot on some of the interviews that he's given over the years. And Simon and Brad, we get that on this, don't we? I didn't realise though that they had that technique with the bucket, so that was an interesting thing. But the jazz style is certainly something that's very dear to Freddie, and again it becomes more elaborate later on and on other albums as well. So we get the full taste here, don't we? We've got snips on previous albums, but I love it. And yet, what am I going to say? The rock professor's going to say one thing about this album, and I'm going to say it for him. The piano was a big thing for English communities, and clearly for Freddie, coming to the UK and being around that, he understood the piano as well, Simon, how it was central to English music, and we're getting a little bit of that on here. I too have given this, Brad, I'm sorry, I've given this a 7 out of 10, but never a skip. Never a skip, Brad.
No.
All right, guys, I won't sort of elaborate too much more. I think it's a very fun little ditty. It's got obviously that retro feel to it, the way it's recorded even, and vocally as well.
I didn't know that.
It's not a very long song. I see it more as an interlude song I think they wanted to try and get a little bit of a theme on this album. Like, I don't know if it was intentional. Some reason I pick up on this album that they're trying to do something like in the vein of like Sgt. Pepper's without doing Sgt. Pepper's, if that makes sense. I can't really.
Good point.
Yeah, I can't really sort of elaborate there properly what I'm trying to say. Nice vocal, a nice little guitar playing section from Brian May. Unfortunately for me, it sometimes is a skip. I'll give it 6.5 out of 10 though. That's my. I don't know if you guys want to time me out for that, but
no.
6.5 out of 10 for me.
No. I think that there is, there's the light and the shade, isn't there? You've got the shade of the first track, the kind of heavy, kind of direct, pointy finger, and then they've clearly made a decision, as Andrew said earlier, that variety is going to be the thing on this album, and they're going to explore all the different bits of the music that influenced them, came into their lives, and they're going to, it's going to be, as we'll see, it's going to be a sort of willfully eclectic album in that sense, of lots of different styles, lots of different things. And I think that, clearly a song that is 1 minute long is is going to be a slightly more minor track than something that's 6 minutes long. And not any less fun, but as a kind of so I think that 6.5, 10 out is fine as a score.
It's not a serious song, and it's like an interlude. So that's the way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and as I say, and it's that thing you do when you're playing live, Brad, isn't it? Where you go straight into the third song. So in a sense, almost like doing it live, where I don't know whether you do this in your band, but I've played in bands where you do the first 4 songs and you kind of run them into one.
Yeah, back to back.
Yeah, back to back. Don't say anything. Whether you stop or something, or whether you can actually transition into the next song. We've done that a few times where you actually transition. You actually play chords or whatever that transition to it, or you choose songs that are in the same key so that you can go into the you're still making a noise in the previous one and the drummer counts off the next one, kind of thing. So I think it's interesting that they do that again straight into the third track, which is "I'm in Love with My Car," which is a Roger Taylor song. I think that it is interesting, Andrew, that you alluded to the fact that the songs on here are they are, each individual member of the band brings songs to and I've clearly read interviews and seen interviews where they've said it's quite a competitive atmosphere. It's quite a competitive place to bring your song, and not only and not everybody does everything on all the songs. Freddie, the previous one, it's pretty much Freddie Mercury on his own doing it. The rest of the band, not so much, but some stuff from things, but mainly it's Freddie doing his thing on his song. So, and this is so it's written and sung by Roger Taylor. So I think that's interesting as well, that that your lead vocalist is not necessarily on every track either. The song was initially taken as a joke by Brian May, who thought that Taylor was not serious when he heard a demo recording of it. Taylor played the guitars in the original demo, but they were later re-recorded by May on his Red Special. The lead vocals were performed by Taylor on the studio version and all released live versions. The revving sounds at the conclusion of the song were recorded by Taylor's then current car, an Alfa Romeo. And the lyrics were inspired by one of the band's roadies, Jonathan Harris, whose Triumph TR4, a TR4, was eventually the love of his life. The song is dedicated to him, with the album saying, "Dedicated to Jonathan Harris, boy racer to the end." When it came down to releasing the album's first single, Taylor was so fond of his song that he urged Mercury, the writer of the first single, Bohemian Rhapsody, to allow it to be the B-side. The decision would later cause much internal friction in the band, in that while it was only the B-side, it generated an equal amount of publishing royalties for Taylor as the A-side did for Mercury. I mean, it's why there's quite a lot of those, in the 60s, people like James Brown would do a part 2, kind of thing on the B-side, so that he wouldn't, he'd get all the money, whereas there are a few cases of that where there's quite obscure songs on the B-side of quite famous songs where they've coined in the money because that's how those things worked. So good for him anyway. Roger getting his money's worth. I mean, it starts off with that kind of huge guitar sound, and I think that for 1975 this is a really big guitar sound. I think it's like the advent of actually being able to do that. People slightly more effects, slightly more things going on. A huge guitar sound and that kind of slow beat and into a classic kind of major chords rock thing. Absolutely. Straight into it. With the guitar answering the vocals. So, sort of that call and response thing. That they start off with during the first verse. And you get to 1 minute 22, and then there's a different set of chords that happen, changing it up, changing the for dramatic effect. And then at 1:48 you go back to the main theme. You've got your guitar solos against the lead vocals, and I'd say that Brian is a tremendously lyrical player, isn't he? There's a lot of melody, a lot of feel in what he plays. It's it's quite interesting, the dichotomy between the artist and the scientist. Brian is he's a doctor of physics or astronomy. but yes, I find that interesting as a sort of internal dynamic for him. So it's very precise, but he still manages to be emotive about it, and he's got that very kind of melodic way of playing. It's not just whizzing all over whizzing over the fretboard and stuff. It's good. Again, the multi-layered backing vocals, and it kind of ends as it begins, doesn't it? It's got that bookended by the intro. Is they play it at the end, and then the revving the car at the end. I gave this an 8 out of 10, and never a skip. Lots of fun. Andrew.
Yeah, look, what a kaleidoscope of it's a kaleidoscope shuffle we've got, of the song. When you consider the other previous two songs, as the Rock Professor said, we've got Roger on vocals, and the writer of the song. I'm not sure if it's 20 out of 10, Keith. I don't know about that. Clearly Keith loves his car. But getting back to the song, I really like the slight delay that they put on Taylor's vocals on this. Just check it out. That gives it that little depth or space, and it's not quite a reverby sound, which is good, because I think at that time that's kind of what they were doing with vocalists, Brad. And so again, it's a nice slight little trick that they've done with the vocals. Very clever of them. We've all had issues and problems with bass players and drummers and bands over the years. Brad has problems with drummers and bass players all the time, week in, week out. But he's
renowned for it. Yes.
but yeah, I just want to elaborate a little bit of a backstory on this that I read, a few years ago about Roger on this. So he locked himself in a wardrobe, ladies and gentlemen, in a closet, because he demanded the rest of the band members agree that this song be side 2 of Bohemian Rhapsody. So there was no artistic reason why they put the song on the record. It was just because Brad, the shitty drummer, threw a tizzy, and so for him to come out of and for them to go home, they agreed. And as the Rock Professor said, it was a tactic that worked really, really well, didn't it? Because he got just as much royalties for that song that Freddie received. And from what I understand too, went on and caused a little bit of concern later on with the band. But we'll talk about that if we do other Queen albums. I like the song, Brad and Simon. I like the song. I'm not going to give it 20 out of 10, though.
Keith is clearly wrong.
I'm not going to give it 20.
You gave the car 8 out of 10. We gave the car that hit him 8 out of 10. TR7, not an 8 out of 10 car.
I'm going to give it 9 out of 10. It's never a skip. And Roger's done a good job. Not bad for a drummer, Brad. Not bad.
Not bad. 8 out of 10. What'd you give it? 9 out of 10.
Yeah.
What'd you give it, Andrew? 9 out of 10.
Yeah. What do you reckon? 9, 8?
Yeah.
You reckon?
Well, for me, my experience with drummers singing, they tend to lose the beat. They tend to, it's like they've got 4 limbs going, and that 5th one sometimes confuses them, I think. So this is my experience. I'm not going to say it's generic. It's just my experience. But I'm in love with my car. It's a very big Roger Taylor moment, of course. Sure. Lyrically, you can really tell he loves his car. He's a big car buff. He loves it, right? There's some great big chordal sections, wonderful backing vocals and the harmonies. John, Roger Taylor proves that he's a lead singer in his own right. Some really nice guitar tones from Brian May as well. John Deacon, he's just keeping it very solid. But I think it's a solid 8 out of 10 for me and never a skip.
Yep.
Yep.
Solid 8.
Singing drummers. They could do 4 limbs independently, but when the mouth is involved, no, it's all going to pots. 5 things they cannot do. Oh dear. I know later on that talking about that on later albums, because of this issue with the songwriting, later on all the songs were just dedicated to Queen. They were were Queen songs rather than who wrote them individually. I think this is part of the reason why. The next track is You're My Best Friend, which is by John Deacon, the bass player, who was it's the second song and the first Queen single to be written by John Deacon. He composed it while he was learning to play the Wurlitzer electric piano. Just yes, I took it away and learned how to play it as a thing, as an exercise. He played the words which Freddie disliked, which is quite nice. I don't like that. On the recording, and overdubbed the bass guitar afterwards. The song was written for his wife Veronica, and it was released as a second single after Bohemian Rhapsody. He plays electric piano. Clearly, you will have heard the sound of this electric piano on Steely Dan records, Stevie Wonder records. A lot of people using that. Electric piano is either a Fender Rhodes or a classic Fender Rhodes or a Wurlitzer. Sources vary, but Deacon wanted to write a song incorporating the instrument, but Freddie, the group's keyboard man, did not want to play it. I refuse to play the damn thing, he said. It's tiny and horrible, and I don't like them. Why play those when you have a lovely, superb grand piano to play? I think that's quite right, yes. So he took it home, learned to play it, and started writing that song. Yes, just a simple melody kind of thing, which is all the best pop song. Starts off with that Wurlitzer piano playing that, melody that they've got. Again, you've got the multi-track vocals as well. Ooh, you make me live, da dee dee, and all of that. It's a very seductive melody, isn't it? Fantastically, great seductive vocals from Freddie. Because it's yes, he's singing and not John Deacon. So John Deacon, not the singer. So I've talked a lot about, and I'll talk quite a lot about the multi-tracking backing vocals, and and that Brian May lead guitar, that signature sound through the Deaky amp, that gives it that sort of octave harmonizer type sound that wasn't around then unless you played it like this. Again, a very expressive melodic solo from Brian. It's a great pop song. I gave it 8 out of 10 and never a skip. Andrew. Got to remember which way around this is now.
Thanks, Robert. Thank you, Robert. Thank you for the nice comments and the awesome support you guys give to the channel. It was really, really cool having John on yesterday. As the Rock Professor said, this is a radio song. This was a song, Brad, that I heard on the radio. And that's not a bad thing, because again, this is a clever band making pop songs, and it's interesting that it took John Deacon, John Deacon had the musical ability to do that on this song. It's very clever, and this is what surprised me, because I only knew about 4 or 5 years ago that this was a John Deacon song. I didn't know that for years and years and years. I always assumed, Brad, that it was a Freddie song. So I remember being blown away when I found that out. Again, I think it must have been on some documentary when they were talking about this. Very clever song. I agree with the Rock Professor. The double and harmonised vocals on this song, it's fantastic. We've heard it with the Beatles over the years. We heard it with the Beach Boys, didn't we? You know, and these guys are just continuing that wonderful ability of a rock band and being able to do that, hypnotize you. I love it. I think Freddie sings really, really well on this. It's a great love song. It's a great love song. And I think I'm going to agree with Keith. I think Keith's got what I think I got. What did Keith give this? I think Keith gave it something like
100 out of 10.
Yeah, I'm not going to Brad score it. I'm going to give this 10 out of 10. Simply because it's a wonderful pop song, Brad. And that ain't a bad thing, bro.
No, we could certainly use more songs like this in the world right now, I can tell you.
Yeah.
But for me, You're My Best Friend. It's a really catchy little song, wonderfully written by John Deacon. Freddie sings wonderfully on this song, and there's some wonderful harmonies, obviously demonstrated by the rest of the band. Each member of the band is highlighted in this song. John Deacon on the electric piano and the bass. You know, John Taylor's drumming. Brian May's displaying another wonderful constructed solo here, and his orchestration and multi-guitar parts and layering. For me, you know, I think Brian May is one of the greatest at layering guitar parts and adding the right licks over the top of the music and playing for the song. So well done, Brian. This song has a bit of a soft spot for me as well, because my son actually said to me once upon a time, because he loves Queen, that this song's like about best friends, like himself and me, how we are together, like we're best friends. So for that reason alone, I'm giving it a 10 out of 10, but it's a wonderful song. Never a skip.
Keith revised his score down to 20 out of 10. A measly 20 out of 10. Yes. Oh dear. So I think that one of the things that song teaches you is that simple is best, isn't it? You know, it's a very simple, almost single note kind of, and yet it has that catchiness, that little earworm melody that that gets in just that whirl. It's a piano just playing that little melody. You know, it's a good example of simple is best. The next track is 39, which is a Brian May song. It's was May's attempt to do sci-fi skiffle. There we are. It relates the tale of a group of space explorers who embark on what is, from their perspective, a year-long voyage. Upon their return, however, they realized that 100 years have passed because of the time dilation effect in Einstein's theory of relativity. Brian, being the astronomer, will be up on this, and the loved ones they left behind are now all dead or aged. May sings the song on the album with backing vocals by Mercury and Taylor. During live performances, Mercury sang the lead vocals. May had asked Deacon to play double bass as a joke, but a couple of days later he found Deacon in the studio with the instrument. He'd already learned to play it. So clearly something of a talent for learning instruments quickly and being able to get something out of it, Mr. Deacon. It's interesting, isn't it? I was thinking about this, that he's kind of the unsung person on this album, isn't it? The bass playing is quite unobtrusive. It doesn't, it just anchors it all down and doesn't anchors it down and is quite unobtrusive. You don't really notice it, but there's so much else going on that it's actually the most sensible thing to do. I take my hat off to him for realizing and understanding it, and just playing what is necessary for the songs, and not so it just keeps it all tight, keeps it all down, but it's not the main thing going on in all of it. But I just make this comment. I read this somewhere that after writing this song, Brian May read the Herman Hesse novel Siddhartha. I don't know if you read any Herman Hesse. I recommend it if you do. The Glass Bead Game is a fantastic book, which tells the story of a man who sets out on a journey to find enlightenment, leaving his community behind. The last thing in the book was him staring across the river to his town, which was no longer his because none of his friends were alive. May told Melody Maker in 1975, "It all seemed very familiar to what I'd done in my song. I maybe that was subconsciously what it was about, going out in search of an artistic career and being afraid of leaving everything behind. It hit me that it was a personal song, not just a story. I don't usually consider an ordinary story enough to put on a record. There had to be another reason, and that told me what it was. It was my insecure feelings of wondering if everything gets left behind if you go out in search of what we're going out in search of. So there's quite a lot going on there. I should say that has that kind of folk beginning thing, acoustic guitar, and then you've got the bass drums and the bass play along, and May on lead vocals. The chorus, I love the chorus bit. As it's got that kind of folky thing that when they sing, don't you hear my calling, though you're many years away, don't you hear me calling you. I think those harmonies are great. I think they're really they thrill me in a way that I can't explain. I don't think this is the most major song on this album, but it's probably my favorite song on this album, to be honest. This one, I love the way that the vocals are constructed, the harmonies. That's got a really delicate electric guitar part as well, and a double chorus to end. And I'm giving this a 10 out of 10, never a skip. As I say, it's probably my favorite song on the album for that kind of folky feel. And that's personal to me. Not. I think it's the most major, but I also think it has a kind of thing in the background to it that I think is interesting. So yes, Andrew.
Yeah, you're right, Keith. There's another song that he does on this album too, which we'll talk about. Is really personal to Brian. This is a song that I changed my score on. As the Rock Professor said, it's very personal. I think it's the first song, from what I understand, that was inspired by a dream. And as the Rock Professor said, 39 is about the year 39, but it doesn't quite tell us in the song what decade it is that these astronauts are going traveling. And what's really interesting at the time, probably people didn't understand, Brad, that Brian May had this academic connection to the subject that he was talking about. Probably a lot of people thought that maybe it was induced by LSD, but it wasn't. It's certainly something that he was thinking about, which is remarkable. I agree with what the Rock Professor said too in the research that I did. Deacon never played the double bass before. And for him to play the double bass on this album is interesting. And again, a little bit of information that I picked up this afternoon. Brian May and Deacon had a bet. And apparently the bet was that Deacon couldn't play the song without doing a bum note on the double bass. And guess what? Deacon did it, So just goes to show how as the Rock Professor said, tapped maybe or unheralded Deacon is as a musician on this album. For him to get that right, clearly the guy is a freak when he's when it comes to music, Brad, or at least being a bass player. I've got some instruments at halftime to show you guys, but what's really interesting is that from what I've read, May played an Ovation 12-string, and I've got that model 12-string to show you guys. We all love 12 strings. I've got one. I know the Rock Professor's got one, and that folk influence isn't foreign to my ears, because the Rolling Stones did it too, didn't they? To a degree, that country kind of stuff on Let It Bleed. Where you've got the tambourine on the offbeat, and then you've got the double bass on the beat. So I'm not surprised the Rock Professor likes and digs that. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10, purely because Deacon got those notes, Brad. He didn't cock up the notes, bro.
Nah, that's good. Good score. Look, you guys have sort of summed this one up really wonderfully, actually. But some lovely acoustic guitars. The electric guitar overdubs are wonderful, over the top. Again, backs up my statement of Brian May knows what to put on a song to complement the song, not to overplay on it.
Yep.
Guitar-wise. And the double bass playing from John Deacon, wonderful. I really enjoyed the lyrics of this song. Like, really, when I listened to it, To be honest with you, I never really gave this song much of a chance. In the past, I've listened to it, I've heard it, but this last week listening to this album obviously has changed my score on this album, on this song. Before I probably would have given it maybe a 6. I've given it an 8 out of 10. It's never a skip for me. His vocals on this are fantastic, and at times you can mistake his voice for Freddie's. It's a little bit freaky. He's got that tonality thing that sort of slips into that Freddie tone. So, 8 out of 10 for me and never a skip.
Cool.
I think that's one of the reasons why all those harmonies are so complementary, isn't it? When they all sing, that they don't have dissimilar timbre to their voices. And,
that's right.
I think that's interesting. Yeah, that's a really good point, actually, Brad. As a thing. The next track is the last track on side 1. I think. Oh no, not even the last track. Is Sweet Lady, which is by Brian May again. So we had a brace of May songs in a row. It's a fast rocker. Didn't find anything particularly interesting about this in my research to say about it. Starts off with that big sounding distorted guitar. So really contrasting with what's gone before, in terms of, you can see, by this time you're getting an idea how eclectic this record is and how the tracks. The first 3 tracks lead into each other, but they're not the same tracks at all. They don't have the same vibe. They don't have the same sound, except for the vocals. The vocals are the thing that bind it all together. The instrumentation wise, clearly not doing that, not the same thing at all. But got dramatic drum rolls around the kit from Roger, and then you've got those driven guitar chords under the verse of the singing. And then a kind of odd bridge as well that does something different. Brad, I put a note to ask you about what's going on in this bridge thing. You can, you're the guitarist in the group. You can tell us how possibly shed some light on what's going on with this, because it is interesting. I think it does that weird thing in the sort of bridge or the doing again double track lead vocals. Which it would sound great, and that overdubbed clean guitar that he uses again as a contrast to to what you've got with the big sound and the heavy driven guitar chords. And towards the end, you've got a lot of the solo is lots of fast playing. It's going a bit less. Bit different for Brian, actually, different feel, a different vibe, more, and some swoops, some sort of whammy bar action, I think, as well, sort of going on, which is not particularly used that before. And that's really cool, gives it a sort of dynamic lift. And there's a second guitar part playing over the drums at the end, galloping drums at the end. I gave this 7.5 out of 10 and never a skip. Andrew.
I watched this really cool interview where Brian's talking about this song, guys, and it was enlightening because one thing that we like about musicians, a lot of them don't really give you a lot of information, and Brian clearly is a guitar player that's happy to tell you everything. And I think John made a comment here about Wikipedia. If Wikipedia fails, all else fails, jump on YouTube. But what's really interesting about this song, from Brian's perspective, is that he wanted apparently to have this hard rock song from Queen as opposed to just being a rock band. And the guy was saying, "What do you mean by that?" And he said, "Well, the song has got it's got 3 different time structures. You've got him playing the rhythm, then you've got the bass, and then you've got the drums. And as the rock professor said, you've got the vocals holding that all together, but then you've got Brian doing something else with the guitar as well, chugging away." It's very interesting. I had to go and listen to it, guys, after hearing Brian talk about this. I'm underdone. I can't score this properly because I think there's a lot more Brad going on in this song. So I'll be interested, like the rock professor said, to hear what you have to say. I will say this though, the live versions of this are amazing. the live version. Go and check out the live versions, because if you're getting tintillated by what Brian's doing with the guitar on this song, he blows it away when he's got those 9 Vox amps turned up to what did John say? All those amps are on 10.
Oh,
you know?
10. Yeah.
All of them.
Wasn't it everything off, everything at 0, bass treble, everything else at 0, and then the volume at 10? Is that what I'm sure that's what he said. Yes.
Yeah. Interesting song. So, yeah, I'm a little bit confused with the song, because originally I gave the song 8 out of 10, but because, Brian is trying to do something behind the song that I can't quite articulate, I'm going to give him a point. 9 out of 10, Brad. I'll come back to it later.
I'm glad you said there's something in this song you can't articulate, because I feel the same way as well. It's got that. I mean, I love that guitar intro. I call it like a shaggy sort of guitar tone. It's very Brian May, and it's got that bluesy feel to this song. The intro especially. The vocals fantastic, very cool lyrics. The harmony vocals as well, the backing vocals are great. At around that 3-minute, 10-minute mark, was it 3-minute, 10 seconds? I think it is there. There's a great solo from Brian May that takes us to the end of the song. It's got that really sort of fade out sort of thing going on. And Brian's playing some wonderful stuff there.
Yep.
The middle section you were referring to, Simon, as well. It took me a couple of listens to settle into it, to be honest with you. Like the last week, I've listened to it intently, and I can't quite articulate what's going on there either, Andrew, like you said. So, but for me, the song as a whole, I've given it 8 out of 10, and it's never skipped for me.
Awesome, brother.
Yeah, I think maybe I'll revise my score up to 8 out of 10. I think that yes, it's interesting that we all think there's slightly something more going on than we can perhaps articulate. That's
perhaps Brian May, when he watches this, can tell us what he was trying to achieve there, or what was actually going on there.
Dear Mr. May.
Are we going to look at some picks?
We've got one more track, sir, on side 1.
Oh, Seaside Rendezvous.
Seaside Rendezvous. Yes, indeed. Which is I know. Because there's quite a lot of short songs on here, you can get 7 songs on side 1, which is amazing. So this is written by Freddie Mercury as a mock instrumental bridge section, which begins about 50 seconds into the song. The section is performed entirely by Mercury and Taylor using their voices alone. Mercury imitates woodwind instruments using a clarinet, and Taylor mostly brass instruments, including tubas and trumpets, even a kazoo. During this section, Taylor hits the highest note on the album, apparently. The tap dancing segment is performed by Mercury and Taylor on mixing desks with thimbles on their fingers. No washboard. And Mercury plays piano and jangly honky-tonk piano on it as well. This is kind of musical vaudeville number, isn't it? Again, showing that eclectic, direction that Queen went in. That very much that kind of, as I say, that vaudeville thing that was around in the UK in the sort of the first half of the century, really. Lots of vaudeville acts, lots of people doing all sorts of crazy stuff, and this sort of thing, singing novelty songs is what I would call this. It reminds me of the Bonzo Dog Doodah Band in the way that the percussion's used, and the slightly sort of slightly tongue-in-cheek song that it is. Again, it's got lots of percussion on it, lots of whistles and noises and stuff going on as for a dramatic effect. Great harmonies as ever, which is what you'd expect from Queen, and that cheeky bit at the end where he says, "Give us a kiss," which always makes me smile. For that, 7.5 out of 10, never a skip. Great fun.
Andrew.
Jazzy Freddie again, as I said before, there was a couple of songs back, we were getting Jazzy Freddie again, and Jazzy Freddie's not scared to be jazzy on this rock and roll album. in the mid 1970s. Again, one of the reasons why Freddie Mercury is as an artist who's not scared to bring in these elements of the past, clearly that he has a connection to. I love it. As the rock professor said, that kazoo solo offers that authenticity, which, was an instrument that would have been prevalent, that, people were playing, because it's a cheap instrument too. Love it. Love the fact that they did that. But I'm only ever going to give it 6 out of 10, Brad. Love the song, though. Nice little ditty.
Well, I'm glad I'm not going to get timed out now, because I was a bit wondering. Look, this song in particular, again, it's sort of reminds me a little bit of the second song in Lazy on a Sunday Afternoon. It's got that same sort of feel.
Yep.
I'm not going to repeat everything you guys have mentioned. It's got a nice little piano intro for me. I love that. Great fun vocals, the harmonies and everything. The backing vocals are great. It has that sort of jazzy big band thing going on. But I have to say that it's sometimes a skip for me, and it's 6 out of 10 as well. It's not quite any more than a 6 out of 10 for me, guys. I'm sorry to say. Hope that doesn't time me.
John's saying it was a pretend kazoo. What's a pretend kazoo, John?
Kazoo. Well, it could have been a paper and comb, which is the other thing you use. A piece of sort of you put paper and comb together, you can get a similar sort of effect for it. Okay, but I don't know where he just.
I never got kazoo off Wikipedia, John. I got it off a classic rock magazine article. So, and you know what I think about classic rock magazine articles anyway. So I blame the article.
We can ask Brian. Anyway. But no, I think that's fair, Brad. I think that that these songs are kind of they're just little kind of vignettes in the and are not part of the main meat of the record. But clearly they wanted to make this eclectic kind of variety record. Variety's the key thing, and put all sorts of different things on, and just some of them is just about having fun, isn't it? Doing all that, imitating all the instruments and stuff, and doing those things. It's clearly them having some fun in the studio, using the studio, and you've got 24 tracks. You start to have overdub possibilities and all sorts of other things like that, don't you? That you can use, and I feel that they're starting to use the studio as an instrument on this record, very much so. Exploring what they can do, with both the singing but also the instrumentation, and just having lots of fun, really. And back in '75, you could do things for having lots of fun. If we take sort of things like Physical Graffiti, you start to get side 3 and 4, and you've got Boogie with Stu, and those other more eclectic things. It kind of there's a vibe going on about those things. And I think that this is at the tail end of that where you could do different things on rock albums. Rock albums weren't considered to be here is a sound and I'm going to play it all the way through. It was, what can we do? What influences can we bring? I'm going to do a folk song next, then I'm going to do a wacky kind of bonzo type, humorous little ditty thing. And so I think it's but I think it's right that it's not one of the main songs on the album for sure, but a bit of fun. Anyway,
Andrew,
we've got some knowledgeable people here in the chat. Photo time, yay! Here we go. And it's brought to us this week by these handsome gentlemen.
Oh, my boy.
Hooray!
Look at that.
He's a very big Queen fan, by the way. He loves the band.
Oh, he's well done. He's going to be good. He's going to be a good boy. Hold on, I'll just get rid of that cheeky comment there by Keith. Hold on.
Not a good for the kazoo. Yeah.
Hold on. Okay, so I can't see these guitars. So let me just hold on. So this here, that's the Ovation 12 string that Mr. May picked
Brian.
up. It's got the curved back. Lovely little guitar. And this is a guitar, the same guitar.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful.
This is the guitar that he played on the next song that we're going to rank, which is interesting. It's a Tokai Hummingbird that he got from Japan. So he wasn't, necessarily looking for, authentic or American-made instruments. He was happy in the early 1970s to play a what was probably considered an inferior Japanese instrument. But now, as we know, they're worth quite a bit of money.
Mm.
Yeah. Nice.
So that's Brian playing Rock Professor. He's playing. Oh, that's on a song to come. So hold on. That's the toy. That's a toy Koto. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. This is a photo of the Diki, which is the amp that John Deacon built. And there's a wonderful story on the show that we did yesterday with John. And John's got a replica of this amp himself. There it is there. That's the actual amp itself sitting on Brian's desk with a battery, 9-volt battery there going through a treble boost, Brad.
Mm.
So there's a couple of songs specifically where this is played, but those songs are on side 2 for us.
It looks like that treble boost is on full, if you can really see that dial. It looks like it's turned all the way up.
Yep, and that's apparently exactly what he did. So there it is there. No volume, no tone, just a circuit board, Brad, and a speaker. That's Brian playing his Red Special 75. And Brad, there's his guitar picks, 6 pins.
Yep.
Interesting.
How his attack on the string. You can really hear it if you're aware of the fact he used the 6 pins. Then you can actually hear it in a lot of the solos, in particular.
Yep. That's the album cover.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting album cover. There's the band, Brad, the hairy lot. So if people don't know, left to right, that's the drummer, Roger Taylor, Freddie, the tall guy, Brian May, and the guy that's next to him is the bass player, John Deacon. And that's from 75, guys, from the actual era of this album.
Great photo.
Closely huddled around the drummer, of course.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Here's an interesting pic that I found. Look at the price. So I got that specifically for the Rock Professor there. So 75
yes.
Odeon Hammersmith, £2, $2.50.
250, sir. 250 in the circle. Yes, not bad at all. See, like Led Zeppelin at Earl's Court, £2.50. See, £2.50.
Mm. There's another shot of the band again, 75. Here's an interesting
what's going on with Roger's hair in that?
That's the earliest photo I could find of Brian with his Red Special.
Wow,
fantastic!
There's a great photo.
Yeah,
probably straight off their workbench.
Yeah, looks like a home, doesn't it? Kind of thing, looking quite a lot less like the rock musician than he did later, isn't it?
Yeah.
The kind of brill creamed down hair and the
That's John in the studio. And the rock professor was talking about this guy's hair before. Look at him there. He doesn't mind talking at all about all the days and all the trouble he got into when he was with Queen. He's quite happy talking about those days. Go
surprisingly.
and check it out.
Yeah. They had a good time, didn't they? Apparently.
Yeah. He doesn't mind talking about them. So if you guys, are interested in those things, here's Freddie. Again, 75. Brian, 75. Here we go.
Doctor.
And that's 75. Look at the stage presence. You can see it just in the photos, Simon.
And that microphone stand with just the top half of the microphone. I don't know why he adopted that, but that was always his thing, that just the top half of the microphone stand.
Well, if the movie's true to form, the first gig they do, he's trying to adjust the mic and it doesn't work.
Well, it comes out.
and he just yanks it out. So never let the truth get in the way of a good rock and roll story,
especially in the movies.
Yeah. If it's in the movie, it really happened.
And another tight group shot, gentlemen.
Yeah. Are you talking about the pants, Andrew, or the...
That's a tight group. Can you get away with that? I don't know. Oh dear.
Both, Brad.
all of the above.
Oh
dear.
And the last shot, ladies and gentlemen, is an iconic pick there, which is the back screen and the show card that we used, which is a still from the first, and we'll probably talk about that when it comes up to the song, but the first video, well, that's debatable too, isn't it? That's debatable because the Beatles did a couple as well, but yeah.
Yes, that's an arbitrary line you can draw somewhere, isn't it? The first video ever. Except for no, I think there's all sorts of other stuff in there, live performance and things. But I don't think that's an argument worth having, do you? So fantastic photographs, lots of fantastic photographs, and
well done.
There's a wealth of material on the Queen. It's fantastic stuff there, and really shows them, shows what they were like and what they were doing. But again, that kind of, I love the fact that they're just, that closest. You get them all in one photograph, huddled around, and John Deacon's looking at Roger Taylor in that second to last shot, looking at, they're kind of playing with each other, not even looking at the audience, kind of thing, So, which is Keith, I don't know about that. Blimey, it's a very contentious statement, isn't it? Better hair than Led Zeppelin. Well, Roger Taylor, magic hair. It was a thing back then, Keith. You could have magic hair. It went away in the 80s. Anyway, fantastic stuff. Really cool photographs, Andrew. Thank you for doing those. That's brilliant.
No problem. So
we move on to side 2, which and we start off with just a short song. One of the major songs on this record, I think we can say, the Prophet song, which is composed by Brian. And he explained that he wrote the song after a dream he'd had about the Great Flood and his fears about the human race and its general lack of empathy, which I think is a really Brian. Clearly he's an emotional guy, and and has lots of empathy. And I think that so I feel that that's entirely in keeping with his character and his his personality. He spent several days assembling the song, including a vocal canon, which we'll get to. It's sung by Mercury in the middle. The vocal and later instrumental canon were produced by early tape delay devices, and over 8 minutes long. Was also Queen's longest studio song. The sped up effect that happens in the middle of the guitar solo is achieved by starting a reel-to-reel player with the tape on it, as the original tape player was stopped. And there we are. So I've written, this is a very kind of prog song, isn't it? Prog rock song. You could, I could almost hear someone like Rush doing this, a song like this. It's very dramatic, but it has that kind of acoustic guitar start, tinkling piano, and you've got the electric guitar that plays under the lead vocals, very dramatic drums. And then I had that kind of double tracked guitar, solo guitar that remind me, I don't know why it did remind me of Wishbone Ash. Oh, that's a bit left field, but well, that's probably not the case. But as remind those twin guitars, those twin melodic guitars that's where it reminds me of Wishbone Ash and Argus. They do some stuff like that on it. I don't know anything other than a connection in my head about that. But the multi-tracking backing vocals that add huge drama to the singing, what Brian's singing about. And the guitar shadows the vocal melody as well, which is a very Brian thing to do. Lovely, lovely melodic thing. And then you've got the sort of the guitar playing in different parts. And then at 3:25, you've got down into this just vocals thing that Freddie put together. Building up the harmonies and the parts. I mean, in an astonishing way. I think that it's amazing. As I've said before, the way that his mind works musically, vocally, and it's an extraordinary piece of multi-part singing. Keith's on it today, isn't he? He's on it today. Fantastic, Keith. Well done. So again, if you haven't heard it, go and listen to it, because it's an extraordinary piece of multi-part singing and all that. And then coming back in with a driven guitar and drums and bass under the solo, and then towards the end, more lead vocals, more lead guitar, and it goes back at the end just with the acoustic guitar and the tinkly piano, just to round it off as a kind of, you feel like it's a circular thing, goes back to the beginning again. I think this is a great song. I've given this 10 out of 10, never a skip, and one of the major songs on this record for sure. And Brian does an it's an amazing several part song to part song. Yeah, Andrew.
Yeah, I'm just looking at Alan's score there. So I'm just looking at my notes, guys. So just give me 2 seconds, because I want to grab a pick. This was the pick that we showed before, and I couldn't remember because so that's a toy koto apparently that Brian plays during the song, which is
right. Interesting, yeah.
Like a harp. But we'll talk about that a little bit later on, because that instrument is prevalent on another track. Simon, I read that Brian spent 2 weeks working on this song.
I'm sure,
And
yeah.
like 39, it was inspired, as you said, by a dream, which is consistent with a lot of English songwriters back in the day. Always keen to talk about their dreams. The 2 extended vocal breaks, Simon and Brad, are epic. Go and listen to the song just for those vocal breaks. I originally gave this song 8 out of 10, but this is another song that I rescored after talking to John yesterday. I went back and listened to it again a couple of times, and also found out something too about the song, Brad, that was really interesting. And I double checked it with a couple of other references and sent a couple of messages out because I wanted to get it right. So apparently May plays the Red Special and Drop D on this So that's one of the reasons why it sounds a little bit not as tingly as you would expect with a Brian May guitar piece. And I found that interesting. That's one of the reasons why I gave it an extra point. But I want to make it quite clear, though, it's never a skip, Simon. It's a masterpiece of a song, but it's a high 9, Brad.
9.631.
Well, you guys have sort of summed it up very well. I must admit, but I love that nice acoustic spacey intro. I think that's really cool. Brian May, he orchestrates some wonderful guitar parts in this song. Great lyrics and sung wonderfully. Very interesting vocal middle section, in my opinion. It's it took me a few listens to get the context to this song.
Sure.
I'm not sure on a first listen through that, or I've been away from it a long time and listened to it, that it sort of fits in the song, but then it kind of does when you listen to it over and over and over again. Lots of overdubs vocally. Feels like another song after all that section, like after all the vocals, and it feels like another song after that. Very sludgy feel from Roger Taylor on the drums. Some wonderful guitar parts from Brian May on that outro piece as well. Look, for me, it's a solid 8 out of 10 and never a skip for me.
Yep.
8 out of 10.
Yes.
That's a
out.
trifle churlish. No. No, but I want to tease you about it. It's much more fun. 8 out of 10. They produced an epic masterpiece and he's giving it an 8 out of 10. Honestly.
Like I said, I love Queen, but they're not quite like Led Zeppelin, where I give 100 out of 10 for everything. Or the
Beatles. With monotonous regularity. It's quite embarrassing sometimes, isn't it?
It's actually nice.
At least you're honest.
Yeah, no,
at least I'm rating the album honestly without. I feel like sometimes I'm biased when it comes to Led Zeppelin or the Beatles or Jimi Hendrix. So at least I'm trying to rank the songs for the album accordingly, which is what we're meant to be doing. So
yeah. No, that's fine. That's right. It just gives me a chance to tease you, Brad. It's much more fun than timing you out with my mock shock horror probe. So the second track, and it does go again. They use this trick of going straight into the second track, which is "Love of My Life" by Freddie Mercury, which is one of those. Pretty much, it's a piano and vocal song, isn't it? It does have guitars and the harp that Andrew can talk about a bit more about, but on it. But he played the piano, sang all the vocals, including the multi-track harmonies, and Brian played the harp bit and the Gibson acoustic hummingbird as well, and his Red Special, and so he arranged it so that they could play it live with an acoustic 12-string for live performances. But it's a kind of heartfelt, impassioned song by Freddie, isn't it? And he sings it as such. Just starts off with just acoustic guitar and piano, which is kind of what the previous track ended with. And interestingly, they drift it into this song as well as the start of this song, which is a really cool effect. I think I like the fact that they've sort of gone from one song to another, but drifted them in from one to the other. Again, as I say, this is a kind of impassioned, heartfelt vocal by Freddie with, it's a piano ballad, really, isn't it? It's Queen does a piano ballad. Subdued bass, some lovely multi-track vocals, nice solo guitar playing with that melodic, typical Brian May melodic playing over the piano, and some more multi-track vocals with guitar playing towards the end. I gave this an 8 out of 10. It's not my favourite song of Queen by a distance. So, it's I'm sure it has a lot of meaning for a lot of people, for sure. And it's, but for me, as a feel thing, it's an 8 out of 10 for me. And I might even sometimes skip it if I'm not particularly feeling in the mood for a heartfelt ballad as well, but not particularly. Andrew.
Yeah, I dig where you're coming from, Simon. And yeah, like I said on the previous track, what's really interesting is that, again, Brian May never played the harp before, according to my research. Never played the harp before. Bear that in mind, ladies and gentlemen. And go and listen to the song and hear towards the end. I forget where the time stamp is. And go and listen to this guy. And it sounds like, in my ears, that the guy's been playing the harp for 20 years. Remarkable achievement. Delicate love song. And, again, in my research, there's a couple of authors out there arguing about who Freddie wrote the song to, whether it was Mary or I forget the name of his other friend. Who gives a damn? It's a beautiful love song. I love the song, but I too have given it an 8 out of 10, like the Rock Professor too. Interesting love song, nice, soft, delicate love song. Brad.
Like you both have sort of, wonderfully explained about this song. It is a beautiful song. It's a beautiful love song. Lovely piano and acoustic guitar. Wonderful vocals from Freddie, and amazing backing vocals through the song as well. Beautiful lyrics. Very cool little guitar solo from Brian May as well. But on the context of this record, I gave it like a solid 8 out of 10 for me. Never a skip.
Oh my gosh! And Keith is going to
Keith got 50 out of 10. Yes.
And he's going to unsubscribe.
Oh dear, Keith, steady now.
Keith, are you a drummer? Are you a drummer, Keith? That's what drummers do.
What, turn in their wrenches and unsubscribe? Oh dear. Yes, just an interesting thought occurred to me, Brad, is that positioning it after the Prophet song. I know it's a contrast, but do you think it's like a contrast too far, in a sense that actually it doesn't quite do it? Does that it does it something of a disservice to put it after that, in a way?
Yeah. I mean, the other thing is we're ranking these songs based on the album. So, like, if you put them up against other Queen songs, I guess it might get a slightly different ranking, higher. But
Yeah. That just struck me as a thing, because clearly it is a tremendous contrast to the first song on the side. Keith says, "Come on, boys, are you all on mushrooms?"
Well, Keith, Ellen agrees with you.
Yes.
Greg agrees with you.
Yeah.
So if those two can't keep you here and keep that wrench in your pocket,
and
none of us are going to keep you here then.
We're sometimes right, sometimes wrong, and always certain. But it's fine to disagree. That's what this is about. It's fun. Anyway, so off we go. That was track 2. Track 3 is Good Company, which is a Brian May song, written and sung by May, who sings all the vocals and plays ukulele. So again, we've got that kind of music hall thing, George Formby ukulele thing, very prevalent in the 30s and 40s. George Formby with his, and of course George Harrison was a dab hand at the ukulele. Joe Brown and various other people from that era. Certainly, I know Brian's younger than they are, but again, he's old enough to have for that to have been still a prevalent part of that kind of musical feel. The ukulele is a very important instrument in the sort of pre and post war in the UK, playing with this thing. So it's yes, it's it's as I say, it's a kind of Brian features a recreation of a Dixieland style jazz band using his Red Special and the Deaky amp, and he composed it on his father's banjo ukulele, but recorded it with a regular one. Mercury was not involved with the song's recording, making it one of the few Queen songs not to feature their lead singer. So it's mainly a thing. Again, for me, a pleasant interlude. It's got some wah-wah guitar. It's got, as I said, it's got that kind of Dixieland band recreation with Brian, which is, on his guitar, and a ukulele solo in the middle. I gave this a 7.5 out of 10. Not a skip. I enjoy it very much, but it's one of the more minor songs on the album, I think. But some great technical stuff, great singing, and some fun playing. Andrew.
Yeah, another lived nostalgic piece for a rock band in the mid 1970s. As Simon said, that jazz big band kind of vaudeville theme seems to be running a current under this album. And these guys can't escape it. And the fact that Brian May is linking back to this is no surprise, because the Beatles, as Simon said rightly themselves, were familiar with these instruments. And go and check out Paul McCartney at the Concert for George, in the starting what is it? Something. Thank you, Brad. I knew Brad would get me over the hurdle. Thank you, brother. and he pulls out the ukulele, and they start talking about how they just used to play the ukuleles together, with George. And when I heard this song, I'm hearing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just can't escape from that, and it was just this nice nostalgic thing, because I think that Concert for George thing, and when we talk about that at some stage too, it's going to be really fantastic. But we've mentioned it a few times in the past, haven't we, guys? But that's in the back of my mind when I hear this, Simon and Brad. But look, Simon, I get what you're coming from. I'm going to give it a 7.5 out of 10 too. But I get where Brian's coming from with this. That live past, that these guys have, and the courage that they have. And to be able to bring this into a rock album, Brad's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, for me, it's another fun ditty. It's got that sort of fun vibe about it. Interesting vocal and use of backing vocals, and definitely sounds like they're trying to catch. It's interesting you said the Paul McCartney playing the start of something. I said trying to catch like that Beatles feel when they did stuff on the White Album or something like that's what it feels to me like. It's not like a serious song as such. I definitely used to skip this as a young fella. I never listened to it, but I've reassessed my score. Sometimes it's a skip, but I have to give it a 7 out of 10. That's a solid 7 from me.
As opposed to a wild mercurial 7.
Do I need time out? I don't know.
No. You're in the same ballpark as we are. It's
I don't know. You might have to run it by Keith.
Yeah. What does Keith say? 9.5 out of 10 on the host scale. Oh dear.
Keith's in charge of the scoring on tonight's show, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah. Keith is going to be on in a minute, timing us all out viciously. Quite right too. It's yeah. I think that it's another example of just that willful eclecticism that they bring to this album. It's kind of just that. Then I'm going to have a ukulele song on it. Because it fits with the Prophet song or anything like that. We're not having unified sound. We're having as eclectic and as wide-ranging as possible. And I think that's fantastic. And then that was all on the table. You could do all of that stuff. Nice, John.
Nowhere
Yeah, nowhere to go. Nowhere to go.
to go.
Oh dear.
If John only knew what we knew.
Oh dear, oh dear.
I don't know where you're going with that one, Andrew. But I'm gonna,
Yeah, me neither. Me neither. I'm now
Lips are
worried that
sealed.
I've missed something. I've missed something intrinsic to Brad. My
Yeah, my lips are sealed. I'm not getting into that one.
I don't want to know what you know. Oh dear. Clearly you are, Keith, in a giddy mood tonight. Yes. All the better for it too. So the next track, I don't know how to approach this Mount Everest really, but is Bohemian Rhapsody. I'm tempted just to score it and we'll move on, but because it's just one of those songs, isn't it? It's one of those, groundbreaking, extraordinary, mold-breaking, one of a kind songs that only comes along once in a blue moon. It has all the trademarks of Queen on it. Apparently it was clearly written by Mercury with Mercury had all the different parts of it in blocks on sheets of apparently phone book paper. Oh, that's true, but and it was during the recording it was known as Freddie's thing, but he had it all in his head, all the different parts, and worked them all out before bringing them in and getting the band to do them. But it's just extraordinary that Brian May said that he recalled in a Q magazine in March 2008. That was a great moment when it was done, but the biggest thrill was actually creating the music in the first place. I remember Freddie coming in with loads of bits of paper from his dad's work, like post-it notes, and pounding on the piano. He played the piano like most people played the drums, and this song he had was full of gaps where he explained that something operatic would happen here and so on. He'd worked out the harmonies in his head, and then they went away and produced them. And I go back to my original assertion that they're the vocal tracks, isolated vocal tracks, are on YouTube, and you should listen to them as if you want to know how to build up a vocal track with the harmonies and singing them multiple times as a thing. It's an extraordinary, it's an epic piece of drama, epic scope and scale, amazing harmony vocals, amazing different parts that make up the whole. I've no idea how Freddie came up with all those little parts and welded them all together into one of the most iconic songs ever in rock, in the rock canon. It's not, it's been played a trillion times ever since, it's heard still all over the place, it's iconic solo, that apparently Brian worked out in his head first, because he said that the fingers tend to be predictable unless being led by the brain. So he actually worked out in his mind before he actually played it, which is cool. I mean, I presume it's everyone's heard it a million times. I'm going to describe it. I mean, it's surely a Brad. If ever there was a song deserved a Brad score, it's Bohemian Rhapsody, isn't it? It just is. It's 1,000 out of 10. It's I don't know what to say about it. There's never been said really, but so because it's many times. Andrew, what have you got?
I'm just going to isolate myself so that I can show you guys something, if that's okay, please.
Oh, go on.
Okay, so I want you guys to have a look at this. So this publication here is called Rock and Rhapsodies, Music of Queen by Nick Bray. Now, I know Nick Bray. Nick Bray if you guys want to check it out, he wrote this book, a lot of this book, when he was doing a PhD thesis here in Hamilton.
Nice.
I met the guy through a mutual friend about 12 years ago. And just bear with me, ladies and gentlemen, bear with me, because there's a quote here in the introduction. And if you're interested in a really good understanding of the music and the theory behind Queen, I recommend this. It's available on Kindle. It's available on hardback and paperback. But can I just read one little thing, please?
Go for it.
Some years ago, when I started this study, I was talking to a stranger at a party about my interest in the music of Queen. He stopped me and confidently proclaimed, "It all comes down to Bohemian Rhapsody." I wish I could remember who he was so that I could properly express my gratitude for his blunt words of insight. For shortly after, he went on to write an article, blah, blah, blah. So I always joked about him and said, you could have put me there. You could have just lied and said that Andrew Walton said that. But no, he's honest. But I think for what we want to talk about, and the Rock Professor mentioned it too, what hasn't been said about this song, and I think it comes down to, I think, clearly Bohemian Rhapsody as a song and what it can mean for us individually. I just want to talk about a couple of things about it. You know, we all know that Freddie was never interested in interpreting his songs for people. Never. You know, and a lot of people have come out and said that Freddie told them what the song was. If that's true, we don't know. At the end of the day, Brad, it's a song I think that we all have our own personal attachment to. It's one of those great songs. And what's really interesting about the song, Simon, too, from the conversations I've had with people over the years, you know, this song just didn't come out of thin air, Simon. You know, this wasn't just, you know, it was in the back of Freddie's mind for a long time. You know, he just needed the environment and the support to get this out, and, you know, clearly getting away. And we see that in Bohemian Rhapsody, the film, don't we? Where they go away to the farm and they have that secluded, concentrated environment to do that, you know, and that's true. That's, you know, from everything I've read and from the people that I've spoken to, that's clearly what the song's about. I'll make one little point before I pass it on to Brad. You know, from my research too, you know, Freddie said many times in articles and interviews that he wanted to be so outrageous with his vocals on this song. He picked the song because he wanted to be so outrageous, because he was pissed off with people trying to make comparisons between his vocals and other people's vocals. And you know, sometimes people like comparisons, or they can deal with comparisons, can't they, Simon? But sometimes, you know, an artist doesn't want to be compared to anybody. So instead of saying, you know, no, I don't sound like anybody, he goes the other way and just goes completely outrageous. And Brad, it works. You know, it's an outrageous song. Makes no sense, but it just brings, I think, and I'm going to be interested to see what people have to say in the comments. But for me, it's a fun song, Brad. It's a fun song. And before we started the show, ladies and gentlemen, we warmed up in the green room. We played a snip from Wayne's World, and when did that come out? Early 1990s. That's what we were doing. That's what we were doing. That's what we were doing. I don't know. Yeah, if you know, driving around an HQ V8 here in Hamilton, That's what we were doing, and we're going to play that at the end of the show, aren't we?
Yeah.
I didn't make too many notes other than Bo Rap, as Freddie used to call the song. It's a masterpiece. It's as the rock professor said, it's a masterpiece. Always has been, always will be. I never get sick of listening to this on classic rock. Hear it 20 times a week. I love it, Brad. This is a Brad score.
Bohemian Rhapsody sucks. I don't like it. 0 out of 10.
You and Keith. Do you see Keith go, this song, meh?
No, I'm kidding, guys. I'm just trying to spare everyone in the chat. It's a masterpiece. It's
Give us that wrench back, Keith.
yeah, I'll give you the keys back, Andrew, and everything, and the wrench. Look, it's a masterpiece, and it's a journey. You know, it's a musical journey from the very start of the song. You know, we hear that harmonized a cappella. You know, is this a real life? That everyone knows that. As soon as you hear that, you know what you're in for. You know, beautiful playing, piano playing from Freddie Mercury, and ooh, I thought we were going to get flagged.
Beautiful. Can't go any further with it.
Beautiful.
It'd be dangerous to go any further with it, wouldn't it?
And equally amazing vocals, lyrically brilliant. The bass playing is perfect. The drumming's perfect. The guitar playing is brilliant. Freddie's singing evokes a lot of emotion. You can feel the lyrical content, you know, that he's singing, and that alone is a difficult thing for a singer to achieve. So if you're feeling what the singer is actually singing about and it gives you goosebumps, then job done. You know, the guitar solo equally leaves me with goosebumps. It's such an amazing solo that it's like Brian May tapped into the song, and like he wrote it. He's playing is so emotive. The middle section, you know, is that orchestrated vocal section, and all the backing vocals. It's all genius. Only a musical genius would be able to think up those creative ideas. I've heard this song so many times on classic rock radio, but my son would, you know, at the age of 4 and 5 on GarageBand, do that a cappella middle section and record all the vocals in that song. I've still got recordings of it I should probably share, which is he's got perfect pitch, my son, when it comes to his voice. So he used to be able to sing very high. His voice has changed a lot as he's got older. But he used to sing all that a cappella section himself and track it, and it was quite remarkable. So I know all the parts now because my son broke it down for me. So I know, and I've heard it 5,000,001 times, and I still love that section. But then obviously we get to the heavy Wayne's World section, as I call it. It's brilliant. You know, the overdubbing, the layering from Brian May on this song is genius. I mentioned it earlier in the piece and other songs where he will layer guitar parts that are perfect. The outro of the song leaves you breathless, sort of leaves you wanting a little bit more. And again, that, you know, nothing really matters, but, you know, what you're hearing Brian May playing over that outro section as well is beautiful. I think there's one moment in every band's career where they want to write their own Bohemian Rhapsody, and obviously it's an epic task to try and do. It's definitely one of my favorite songs from Queen. You know, I think the Rock Professor and Andrew have covered everything else I want to say about the song. It's a, you know, what the boys call a Brad score. It's a million out of 10, and it's hard to rate all the other songs on this album against it. That's why some of them are 6.5s and 7s, because you can't rank songs that aren't this, you know, song on an album, so everything else is going to be challenging to get a high ranking against this song. So yeah, it's
Sure.
it's brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
I agree, bro. And what's really also interesting about this whole song too, it's the backstory, how, you know, Kenny Everett played it. The record companies didn't want to play it. You know, they wanted, you know, I'm in Love with My Car, or the other song that Deacon wrote as the single. You know, that riff at 4 minutes and 6 seconds is just a classic riff, isn't it? You know, where he's playing, May is playing the Red Special and 3 Vox AC 30s turned up. Apparently 180 voice tracks on this track. And one other little piece too that I picked up, guys, when I was watching an interview this morning after I watched the All Blacks draw with England. At the 2 minute and 2 second mark, you hear some bells. And Brian says that it's not a bell, it's a sixpence, his 6-pence pick, rubbing between the bridge and the tailpiece on his Red Special. And, you know, I always thought it was bells. Always thought it was bells. Just a remarkable song. Remarkable, Simon.
Yeah. Well, it's difficult, isn't it? To, you know, you can't to be objective about it because, you know, it's however many years it is, you know, 47 years later or something, you know, that we're kind of looking at it through the lens of, and you know, trillions of plays. It's known the world over, anywhere, everywhere. You know, it's in, as you say, and it kind of crosses the generations, doesn't it? You know, Raddy was saying your son knows it better than all of a sudden, you know, my kids all know it, and, you know, have it on off, you know, and everyone sings in the car if it comes on, and, you know, there are a few songs that actually can do that, you know, and, you know, it's it has to be acknowledged, doesn't it, that, you know, that makes it a transcendental song in that sense in rock history for sure. You know, it transcends its own time, anybody else's time, as a, you know, as a song. You know, what I mean, kind of transcends whether you like it or not. Really, you just have to treat it as a kind of, you know, as what it is, as an iconic, you know, thing that. Yeah, that's right, John. They tried to cut it down, didn't they? The record company wanted to edit it. It didn't really work. But, you know, they put it out, you know, and it had, we should say that it also had an amazing video as well, that amazing video with the 4 heads. And, you know, that bit really, when you get loads of things, you know, kind of representing all that harmony stuff. You know, that was groundbreaking for 75. Probably not the first video, but it was, you know, everybody saw it on Top of the Pops and things, you know, and, and that mixture of that video playing some parts of it and then them doing some other bits of it live as well. So that, you know, how they seem to perform it then. Yeah, yes. Where do you go with that? Yes, and of course blows my theory that the weakest song is the second song and the second to last song on any album. Clearly not the case here. You know, as a thing, perhaps not the case here, but yeah. I mean, it's, you know, it's a transcendental song and transcends everything really. So anyway, yes, how to follow that? Well, follow it by a short instrumental, which is "God Save the Queen," which is basically Brian playing it on his guitar. Apparently, he played a guide piano, which was edited out later, and added lots of layers of guitars. And the song, after the song was completed, it was played as a coda at virtually every Queen concert. Basically, so yes, it's basically a little instrumental piece at the end, a minute long. "God Save the Queen" with a bit of extra. I don't know, it's a 6 out of 10, probably. "Living in the Shadow of Bohemian Rhapsody." I think that it's, you know, it's a take it or leave it thing. Yeah, I could leave it sometimes. It's not, but I understand. You know, it's a bit of fun, and you know, I can see why in a concert sense, you know, to have your own version of it that you play at the end of a concert is never a bad idea. But yeah, 6 out of 10 from me. Andrew.
Well, he couldn't play bloody Star Spangled Banner, could he? Because Jimi Hendrix already did that. So, you know, what's the next best thing that an Englishman's going to play? God Save the Queen.
Okay. Yeah.
Look, I agree with you, Simon. It's just obviously, you know, Queen, God Save the Queen. You know, yeah. You know, I dig it.
Yeah.
I dig it. But again, you know, let's make the point that John made on the show last night about Brian May playing it at the Queen's coronation anniversary at her Jubilee, you know, and, you know, clearly had some significance for him as a man, as a British subject, as a musician, as a guitar player, you know, to be asked to do that. You know, Daniel Craig did it at the 2012 James Bond, you know, with the Olympic Games, didn't he? Walking with the Queen, and, you know, it's
yeah. Sorry, I just remind when you say walking with the Queen, just reminds me of was it Saw Lon Chaney walking with the Queen doing the Werewolves of London.
Yeah. Look, I get it, but you know what, Simon, Brad, we probably skipped it. I 70% of the time. I'm going to give it 6 out of 10.
Look, guys, I've always considered Bohemian Rhapsody to be the last song. And I've always thought this was like, you know, the mystery track on the album, just as a little fun thing. I think Brian May might have recorded this earlier than the whole album, and they just wanted to, from my studies, I could be wrong there, but this was recorded before the album was even done. And maybe they just thought, well, let's just throw it on the end of the album.
Well, you know what? You know, if it was good enough for Paul McCartney, it's good enough for Brian May.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean, look, to be honest with you, I know Brian May was a big Hendrix fan. Maybe it's his a Brian May version of the, you know, God Save the Queen.
Star Spangled Banner gag.
You know, look, let's be honest, it is brilliant what he's done, but in the context of the album, you know, 6.5, maybe a 7, and I have to agree, I probably would skip it sometimes. I don't really know. I don't let the CD finish because it's only a minute, but I do think it was I'll just chuck it there just as like a little mystery track to finish it off, yeah. Because what else can you put after Bohemian Rhapsody?
Of course, the other thing we need to remember is that, for context, that back then, 1975, when television closed down, the last thing it did was play the national anthem. And if you went to the cinema, after the film, they played the national anthem. So there's a kind of thing in that about it's the end of everything, if you like. So there's a kind of, you know, that kind of coda thing. So I think that clearly it has a reference to those other things where the national anthem was used as that kind of closing down thing. So I can see that has a, you know, and then it has a reference to as a sort of cultural reference that is in a broader context that it doesn't have now. It's worth saying, I think. But yeah. But I agree with John. I think what you said, Brad, you know, that really Bohemian Rhapsody is the end of the album, and this is just a little, you know, as I say, the closing down of it.
Well, just on you know, on Bohemian Rhapsody, one little thing I forgot to mention, and I'll just throw it out there, is for songwriters to actually write sections of songs but not have continuity and make something of it. That's a really bold thing to do, and to put it together the way that they did, it's just amazing. So that's you know, that's my conclusion.
Yeah. Agreed. Absolutely. You know, and for Freddie to have that, to have the vision, you know, to have it in his head, what he was going to do, all the different sections and all the you know, the bits, and fit them together. And clearly when the band are doing it, they don't know what it's going to sound like because you're in the middle of recording the bits, aren't you?
Thanks, John.
Thank you, John. There we are. So you were right, Brad. It's recorded earlier, and
Awesome. If
So
you
there we
guys are
are.
interested in the book that I made a reference to, I'll put that link in the chat if you guys want to go and check it out. Boy, this has been, the week before we did Heaven and Hell, and I thought that was pretty good. And then we did this album here. It's like, gosh, yeah. So, who's got the pick for next week?
Apparently Brad has.
Awesome.
Apparently that's not true because Brad's got a gig next week. So
Oh,
he said not to throw him under the bus. So the first thing we do when we get on is throw him under the bus.
Oh, okay. Well,
what time
we'll
is it? 4:30, Brad, do you say?
My gigs are, I've got to be there at 4 for sound checking at 4, starting at 5.
Okay. We'll let you guys know what we're going to do. Follow us on our social medias. We'll make a an announcement here on the communities page if you follow us on YouTube. But you should be following us on Instagram. Most of yous are. That would be great. But we go crazy. We'll let you guys know what we're going to do on all our social media accounts. We'll sort something out. It's been a pleasure, Simon. Thank you for picking this and feeding that into the show that we did yesterday with John. Worked really, 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 really well. If you guys are watching this and you haven't subscribed to our channel, please do. And go and subscribe to our friends. I need to add John on our community page too. I promised him that I would do that, so we'll go and do that after this show. When you guys are ready, we'll play Wayne's World, because if Mr. YouTube doesn't like it, we can edit that out at the end, guys. Is that cool?
So we'll wave and then play
it. Yes, absolutely. Wave during the playing, and we should say that
wave now and then play it. And
our American brothers got that right, though. Wayne's World got that right, didn't they?
Isn't Mike Myers Canadian?
Okay, well, the American producers then.
Just causing trouble at the back. Williams is causing trouble at the back, so. Shall I say goodbye to everyone in the chat? I'll say goodbye to everyone in the chat. So Keith Campbell on fire today, Keith. Clearly having a whale of a time. Ellen as well. Thanks, Ellen, for joining. And John ZD, as ever. Hilarious stuff, you guys. It's been great fun to have and to read. So thanks for your contributions. Digital Guitars UK. Nice to see you, Digital. And,
cheers, Andy.
Cheers, Andy. Rolling back up, Greg Roberts tune. Thank you, Greg. Good to see you. Keith, Greg, Allen. Come on, site further back up. Digital Guitars. Got Teresa as well. So thanks, Teresa. Nice to see you as well, and Charmaine as well. Lovely to see you in the chat as well. Hope you're all good. And Nelson Rodriguez, who was earlier on, probably gone to bed. Robert Ranford as well. Nice to see you, Robert. Thank you so much for dropping by. Good to see you. I think that's probably everybody. With a bit of luck, I'll just skim up the top. See, yeah, I think hopefully I got everybody. Thanks everyone for joining. I hope you all have a great week and stay safe. And we'll see you next week. Play it, Sam. Bye.
Share screen. Share audio. Go up here.
This is my best friend, Garth Algar.
Hi.
I think we'll go with a little Bohemian Rhapsody, gentlemen.
Good call.
I see a little silhouette of a man. Scaramouche, will you do the fandango? Thunderbolts and lightning, very, very frightening.
Galileo.
Galileo.
Whoa, Phil.
Phil, what are you doing here?
You're partied out, man. Again.
What if he honks in the car?
I'm giving you a no honk guarantee.
Phil, if you're gonna spew into this.